This happened about 10 years ago. I, at the time, was dating my now husband, and we had planned a dinner with his family at his mother's house. The dinner was set for a Friday, and being that we were going there after work, we drove in our separate cars. His mother didn't live in the best of neighborhoods, but I wouldn't call it the ghetto by any means. When I arrived with my two sons, there wasn't any parking on her street, so I was forced to park on the side street next to her house. When I parked, I noticed how odd it was that her street was full of cars, but the side street I parked on was pretty empty other than the houses. After getting out of the car, I was carrying my 2-year-old son, while my 10-year-old held my hand. I noticed a white pickup truck driving towards us at a very slow pace. He didn't appear to be looking at the houses, as someone might be if they were looking for a house address. He kept a stare on us. As I kept walking to turn the corner to my mother-in-law's house, he drove right past us and never took his glare off of us. I locked eyes with him as I was in the protective mommy mode, and he turned away and kept driving. After a few hours, it's late and dark outside, and we all get ready to leave. My 12-year-old stepdaughter wanted to ride home in my car. I told my husband I would meet him at home since he was still saying his goodbyes and wasn't completely ready to leave yet. As we walk to the car, I have my 2-year-old that I'm carrying, while my stepdaughter and son are walking right next to me. As we turn the corner, I see my car, and I see the same white truck parked right behind it, with the creepy guy in his car and his truck running. There aren't any other cars parked on this particular street, so there should be no reason he's parked right behind my car. I tell the kids to be careful and stay close. As we get closer, his eyes lock with mine. Neither I nor he look away. I can see pure evil on his face. His expression never changes, and his eyes staring start making the hairs on my neck stand up. At this point, the kids notice him and start getting scared. I, for a split second, questioned if I should walk back to my mother-in-law's house, but for whatever reason, I kept walking to my car. As I get to the back passenger side to open the door to pull my son in the car, the guy reached out his rolled-down car window to unlock the driver's door, all while not taking his eyes off of me. And as he gets out of the car, and before he even had a chance to run up to us, I scream as loud as I can for the kids to run. I start running, still with my son in my hand, and my stepdaughter and son are in front of me, attempting to run away. As I'm running, I turn around, and sure enough, this creep is chasing after us. My 10-year-old is slowing down, and I give him a little push, while yelling, "Run! Run!" I was yelling at the top of my lungs, yet no one came out of their house to help. Right before I turned the corner, I noticed a patch of grass, and I thought I was going to lightly throw my son there and let this creep catch me, since he was gaining on us, and I as a mother would of course rather him hurt me than any of my kids. Right before I did though, I see my husband run out of the house with his brother, since his daughter had made it inside the house, crying and telling him that someone was chasing us. They ran, and the guy took off before they could even get a glimpse of him. The creep left his truck running, and he was nowhere to be seen. We called the police, and when they examined his vehicle, they found his wallet, rope, and Clorox right in the front seat. The cops said whatever he was planning wasn't good. They eventually found him hiding under a car in a neighbor's driveway. They asked my stepdaughter and I to identify him. We were so shaken up, and just seeing him again made us upset. He was taken away, and I couldn't sleep for days after. I later found out, after his arrest, that his fingerprints came back as a suspect in an unsolved murder. Even after all these years later, it still scares the hell out of me. I can't imagine what would have and could have happened to us, but I thank God nothing did. I should note, the reason he had to reach out from his car window and open the door from the outside was because he had removed the door handles. The cop said it was clearly so once we were inside, we couldn't open the doors to get out.
Some backstory. This was years ago. I was around 12 or 13. I grew up in a small town, technically a village, about an hour and a half away from a big city in the US. On summer days, my best friend and I would venture around our woodsy neighborhood and do typical kid things. I had a little sister who was around 7 or 8 at the time, and she also had a little sister who was the same age. My friend's name was Sarah, my little sister Sammy, and her little sister Alex. We would occasionally let them tag along on our adventures, especially if our parents made us. Our favorite thing to do was walk over to the other neighbor's house, we'll call them the Smiths, and use their trampoline. It was in our neighborhood, but the houses were pretty spread out with dense forest in between. We set off towards their place, and it was about a 20 to 30 minute walk. Longer on the way back because then we had to go uphill. One day, Sarah and I decided to let Sammy and Alex come to the trampoline with us. They weren't really allowed very far from our house without an adult or us with them. We played on it for about an hour or two, and we decided that we were thirsty or hungry, one of the two, and decided to head back to Sarah and Alex's house for some snacks. We were almost back to their house, but the last stretch before their house was the longest amount of isolated road with a creek flowing by and no houses on lining the road, just dense forest. As soon as we cleared this area, we would be right back on top of their house. As we're almost through the wooded part and we see their house up ahead, a woman with short black hair and sunglasses is walking her baby in its stroller. She was walking towards us and would soon pass us. I didn't recognize her as someone who lived in our neighborhood, and I know everyone. But lots of people from the surrounding neighborhoods take walks here because of the woods. She passes us by normally, but right after she does, she says, "Oh, hey kids, I'm a little lost. Do you know what road this is?" None of us were very alarmed. The neighborhood is windy and can be confusing. And plus, she was just some lady with a baby, not some scary man. We told her the name of the road, and she told us that she was really lost and needed to get home to take care of her baby. She then asked if we could escort her to her house because she didn't think that she would be able to find it even with directions. Sarah agreed to help, but I felt very uncomfortable and was told never to talk to strangers, even if they're a woman. I told the lady none of us could help because Sarah's dad was expecting us home soon. Sarah gave me a weird look, but I think she caught on because she said, "Oh yeah, we really can't help, sorry." At this point, I wasn't really freaked out. I just knew that I shouldn't be helping strangers to their house. I went to step in front of the younger two. They were trailing behind us and I wanted to push them forward so we could start walking away. I stepped closer to the lady in my efforts and took a look into her stroller. That's when my heart sank. The baby was fake. It was a baby doll. It was wrapped in blankets, but I could clearly see that it was plastic. At that point, I didn't know what to do, and I found myself screaming, "Run!" I made sure that Sammy and Alex were ahead of me, and we sprinted for their house. Her dad was working in the garage on something, and we ran out of breath and started crying. I quickly just said that there was a lady trying to get us to go home with her and had a fake baby. He grabbed a golf club from his caddy that was laying out and told us to get in the house. We went in, and a few minutes later he came back. He said that he was heading towards the lady when she spotted him. She was already on the phone with someone. Out of nowhere, a white van apparently pulled up and she threw the stroller in and they sped off. It was definitely a creepy experience, and I don't know what the lady's intentions were, but I feel that they weren't innocent. This truly scared the shit out of us. We didn't wander around the neighborhood nearly as much, and when we did, we were always looking out for something.
Hello there. My name is Zach. The reason I'm here is to tell the story of some events that creeped me out. Now, this all started back in summer of 2015, back when I worked at the Walmart of my town, pushing carts. I'm not exactly sure the exact date it all started, although I do recall it was around the 4th of July. It all started with a simple call over my radio, with a request to help someone load their items into their cart. Glad to get out of the hot summer heat, if only for a few moments, I responded quickly, saying that I'd be right there, and hurried in. I walked over to the register, where the customer had requested assistance. The customer was a heavy-set, middle-aged man who had purchased a 52-inch flat screen. I greeted the man with a warm hello and smile, which he returned. This man stood at about 6'8" and spoke with a deep southern accent. He offered his hand for me to shake, which I did before he led me to his van. On the way, he made small talk with me, asking how my day was, how old I was, if I liked my job. I answered all his questions honestly, saying that my day was going fine so far, and that I was 18, and that I could have a job worse than this. We got to his gray van, and worked together to load his TV into the back. Before parting ways, he asked me where I lived, and if I lived alone. Now, this wasn't unusual, as a few other customers had asked me this before in the past. I simply said no. I stayed with my grandparents, having been too poor to afford to live by myself at the time, and I lived a mile or two out of town. I took the man's cart, wished him a good day, and just walked off. It was a few days later that I realized, whenever I worked, that gray van would be in the parking lot. I didn't think too much of this, as it wasn't unusual for people to shop at Walmart every single day, so I would just go about my work. That was until a week afterwards, when after noticing the same gray van, I turned to a fellow cart pusher named Joe and said, "That gray van is always here." Joe nodded in agreement. "Yeah, I know, dude. Although, it's strange. I've only ever seen that van here when you're working." Confused, I asked what he meant by that. He responded with, "I've only ever seen that van here during your shifts. It leaves shortly after you do when you clock out." I found that to be a little strange, but blew it off as a coincidence. Then, one day, I noticed the gray van would follow me everywhere I went. I don't own a car, so I walk everywhere I go. I don't really mind, as I enjoy the experience of walking. Again, I would just chalk up the van always following me as a coincidence. Pretty sure the van was just heading in the same direction, although I always found it odd that the van never drove past me as I walked, but always hung back, not caring if it was holding up traffic. Red flags didn't start going off until I spotted the same gray van trailing me on a Wednesday night as I was walking back home from my youth group meeting at church. At first I brushed it off as usual, until it followed me out of town. Normally it would turn away when I left city limits, but this time it continued to follow me. I started to feel as though something wasn't right about this, and began to wish I had my pocket knife on me, just in case. The van followed me till I walked into my driveway, before finally driving off. I had gotten the chills at this point, and made sure to lock all the doors when I entered my house. That next night, I was walking home in the dark again after a men's group Bible study. The memory of last night was burned in my mind, and I had decided that if that van followed me to my house again, I would notify the police in the morning. Sure enough, it ended up trailing me. I gritted my teeth, sick of whoever this person was. However, the van pulled a few feet ahead of me and stopped. The driver's side door opened, and the customer who I had helped with the TV stepped out and approached me. He greeted me like everything was normal and asked me where I was headed. I told him I was headed home, making the mental note to tell the police about this guy first thing in the morning. The man continued to act friendly and offered me a ride home, stating that it was too dark for me to walk home and that weirdos might try something. I declined, saying I didn't live that far away, but he kept insisting it was too dangerous and that I had to ride with him. The more I said no, the more he kept pushing for me to get in his van. It was at this point I decided I was done and started to walk past this guy when he put his hand on my arm and started pulling me to his van, stating that he was giving me a ride whether I liked it or not. Being a 19-year-old young man, I had always thought I would be able to easily handle a situation like this should it happen. However, panic had taken over my body, and my mind raced of a way to get away from this guy. Pretty sure wherever this guy wanted to take me, it sure wasn't my house. Now, I don't know if it was a miracle or just plain luck, but at that moment, a police car drove by and pulled into the nearby gas station to fill up. The man let go of my arm, wished me a good night, got into his van, and sped off. I decided to talk with the cop while he was getting gas, telling him about the past events. The cop ended up driving me home, telling me that if I saw the guy again, to immediately call the police. It's been months now, and I never saw that guy again. I eventually quit my job and moved to another state, starting college. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened to me if that cop hadn't drove by that night. Hello guys, Blue Spooky here, and I just wanted to thank you all for watching, especially if you made it to the end here. I also wanted to give a special thank you to Unit 522. He's the one that collaborated with me this episode. We did a little story swap, so I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. As always, links to my social media will also be in the description, just in case you want to send me any personal stories, or if you have any stories that you want me to read, you can go ahead and send me a message there. If you have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, and let me know what you think I can do to improve. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.